Can you feel it? It's the holiday spirit. That's right. There's 5 weeks to go until Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa. It's that time of year you start putting up the decorations, thinking about what gifts you have to buy your loved ones, and of course, writing those cards that have to be sent to your parents, grandparents, kids, maybe that friend that moved abroad. But this year, there may be a big snag to those plans. A lot of us are worried our gifts and cards may not make it on time. That's because, since Friday, 55,000 postal workers across the country have been on strike. Despite months of negotiations, the union and the Crown Corporation were unable to reach a collective agreement, with wages, benefits, pensions, job protection, and working conditions all sticking points at the bargaining table. And while the federal government has been quick to put an end to other labor disputes in recent months, Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon has sounded a bit more hesitant with this one.
Collective bargaining sometimes requires patience. We're, of course, applying every possible resource to the situation, and we're hopeful that parties can come to an agreement.
Are you sending your Christmas cards by Canada Post?
Well, I'm hoping to, yes.
So what's causing the gridlock at the bargaining table? How long will this strike last? And will it end in time for those holiday deadlines, or should you be making alternate plans? I'm Cormac McSweeney, and today on The Big Story, we're digging into the Canada Post strike. Joining me is Patrick Groom, a certified specialist in labor law and a partner at McMillan LLP. So Patrick, we have this postal strike ongoing. The two sides are still negotiating. The union and Canada Post say there are some slivers of progress at the bargaining table, but much more needs to be done. In your opinion, how far apart are the two sides, and how difficult will it be to find a solution here?
We have two parties here that are actually fundamentally far apart and different from each other, not just in their proposals, but what it appears to be their actual belief and approach to bargaining. For example, we have the Canada Post Corporation, who is saying that they are operating at a significant loss and they need to find some relief within its labor costs in order to be more competitive in the market. On the union side, there's been a fundamental belief that the Canada Post Corporation actually is not in this as worse a financial position as they claim. They cite the fact that over $4 billion has been paid off in terms of debt. They also cite the billions in assets that the Canada Post still owns. And so there's a fundamental belief on the union side that the numbers that are being put forward by Canada Post cannot be trusted.
So then how do you get through that major hurdle of these fundamental differences when there's such a division on the financial stability of the Crown Corporation and how much give and take there could be on key issues like wages and benefits?
Well, right now we've had the appointment of the special mediator, that's Peter Simpson, who's well respected in the industry. He has a long history of finding solutions, practical solutions. He himself was a union leader that came out of faculty associations before he ended up joining government and taking on that role. If there is a deal to be had through Peter and through conciliation efforts, the focus will have to be on practical solutions, trying to park those fundamental beliefs and just focus on where can we find a practical agreement that everybody can live with. When that's where we come to look at the positions or the proposals from each party. Right now, on Canada Post's side, they've actually published a synopsis of their current bargaining position. It can be divided into two elements, one concerning current employees, and then one part that is concerning future employees. With respect to current employees, the offer right now is 11.5% wage increases over 4 years, which is consistent with many collective agreements that have been negotiated personally as well of what has been published over the past year and so. In other terms, Canada Post has said, we're not going to seek any other concessions or changes in respect of other benefits, pension, vacation. They're going to protect it, is the term that they have used, or protect those entitlements. But there's was one other fundamental element to that. With respect to current employees, there are two policies that the union is fundamentally opposed to. One is with respect to sorting, and the second is with respect to load distribution or load sharing. With the first one, that means the assignment internally of sorting mail for mail carriers before they go out. Historically, letter carriers would sort their own mail and organize it in a way that would be efficient for delivery. That would take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, and then they would go out and walk their routes. By moving that function to an internal person, somebody who is dedicated just to sorting for various letter carriers, the letter carriers are then expected to walk further, both not just being out on the street for anywhere between 30 minutes and up to 2 hours longer, but that would also permit longer routes. The union has fought this change, and then they lost at arbitration, where an arbitrator confirmed Canada Post has the right to implement that. The second element, load sharing, is where if it happens to be a light day, work can be distributed or redistributed among the letter carriers. The effect of that is letter carriers will now have to work their entire shift. It used to be if you were able to finish your route early, you'd be allowed to leave early and still get paid for your full shift. With load sharing, it means that more frequently, letter carriers will have to work their entire shift. So even if they finish their own route early, they're going to have to take on more work and will lose the ability to leave work early. So those are two elements that the union is fundamentally opposed to and fighting in this context, because again, as I mentioned, particularly on the sorting side, the union already lost at arbitration.
Okay, so there are obviously some sticking points that have to be dealt with here. But I think what a lot of us are wondering right now is, when will this strike end? I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking about writing my Christmas cards or sending gifts to friends and family across the country and overseas. Of course, a lot of businesses are doing the same because they're concerned, since a lot of them rely on Canada Post as a cheaper alternative to send out their goods. So with a federal mediator at the table, how long can we expect this to last?
Well, the mediation route, as great as the mediator is, they cannot force a deal. They cannot force the parties to agree. So the mediation, conciliation, it will take time. And of course, as you mentioned, time is of the essence in order to save the holiday season business. Drawing on historic precedent in 2018, when the union engaged in rotating strikes, so unlike the current situation where it is a 100% broad strike, in 2018, the rotating strikes lasted upwards of 5 weeks before the government intervened. The government itself intervened around this exact same time of November in order to save the holiday season. Since now we have a strike that started right when we're approaching the holiday season, we are really under a time crunch. The other precedent for such a government intervention in a relatively short basis is the railroad strike we saw back in August of this year, where a strike was permitted to last approximately 17 hours. Mind you, that railroad strike had a vastly larger or more substantial impact on the broader economy. And so the Minister of Labor moved to act quite quickly. However, in this scenario, there's a political consideration of the public's interest in respect of wanting to get their Christmas cards out and other deliveries in times for the holidays, versus the need to at least give conciliation, to give mediation at least some time to see if there's some traction and if there's some ability to get the parties to agree.
So should Canadians be worried? Should they be making alternate plans for their cards and presents that have to be mailed, given the two sides are still far apart and the government has to make some careful political considerations before stepping in to end this?
It's difficult to say at this time just because conciliation has only just started. However, if I myself will be making alternative plans because I don't foresee that this strike is going to end anytime soon unless the government intervenes.
Okay, I think it says a lot that even a labor lawyer is looking at different options for the holidays as a result of what's going on at Canada Post. It definitely puts it into perspective for people. But let's talk a little bit more about the government's options here before we wrap up. In the past, when the feds wanted to end a labor dispute, they tended to utilize back-to-work legislation in the House of Commons. But in recent months, the government has been using its powers under the Labor Code to force the Industrial Relations Board to then force workers back on the job and institute binding arbitration to settle those negotiations. The minister says he's not looking to intervene at this moment, but if he does step in, is it better for the government to use this more direct labor code approach or through legislation, which used to be the norm?
The advantage to back to work legislation is that you then have political buy-in from all people's representatives and the parties. However, right now with the legislative logjam that we see in Parliament, the exercise of the Minister of Labor's power under Section 107 of the Canada Labor Code is going to be the most expedient way of ending this strike. Just as with the port strike and just as with the rail strike in the summer, the use of Section 107 to have the Canada Industrial Relations Board begin binding arbitration, specifically interest arbitration, to resolve the collective agreements disputes, and also order the continuation of the current collective agreement until a decision in that process is reached. That's going to be the fastest way for the government to stop this strike. Really, it's a question of the political urgency and the decision to exercise that power.
Patrick Groom, labor lawyer and partner at McMillan LLP, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and helping all of us get a better idea of where things stand and how we should plan our holidays amid this strike.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And a reminder about a new great listening experience for you. You can listen anytime to the Big Story podcast on Seeker. That's SEEKR. I'm Cormac McSweeney. Thanks for listening.